When you go to the Super Bowl, there is tremendous success waiting for you. But if it doesn't work out, the downside is almost every bit as bad. And look, my broadcasting, almost everything I do now is just because I played well and we won that Super Bowl. And
really? You think everything is an offshoot of that?
I do. I think if I wouldn't have won the Super Bowl, that my credibility would have been shot down a lot in broadcasting.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 5 of the Pseudo Nerd Podcast for February 5th, 2016. I'm your podcast host, Josh Kiser, and joining me in this not studio, as we've discussed previously, Josh Haddix. And Kyle Hoagland.
All right, my face is wiped off. I'm good to go, guys.
We'll let you guys all wonder what exactly he was talking about.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna tell you why.
Dude, pretty sure
it was
Haddix,
a cheeseburger.
After I introduced you, I left you muted, so you may not have. No one may have heard you giggle on the way in on that one.
I wasn't even gonna giggle until you said in not studio, so that's all right.
Yeah, totally forgot I had you guys, everybody muted up on that beginning there.
I mean, some
classic.
host
I'm
we've
still
got.
working
Dude.
out the kinks here. I mean, it is only episode 5, so.
Well, I mean, also it's episode 2 of you taking over the recording. I mean, to my credit, it was the first 3 were flawless.
I think to your credit, we weren't using all these new fandangled machinery and applications.
What, you an old-timey prospector?
I know.
It's just all peaches.
Speaking of old-timey prospectors, they probably did a lot of mining out in San Francisco, which is where Super Bowl 50 is going to be hosted, and also the theme for today's podcast.
Give you that one. I'll give you that. You got a little overexcited.
I was hoping we were just going to give you silence.
No, I'll give you that one.
I just like the fake enthusiasm for that one. It was almost like you were so proud of it that you had to amp it up even more than it was worth.
I was quite proud of it. As you said prospect, I was like, oh yes, this is gonna work right in. I have a list of buzzwords that'll tie me into segues, and you just tripped one up. So you
I activated your trap
my
card.
segue card. Yeah. But first things first, let's remind everybody to go follow us on all forms of social media. Twitter, @PseudoNerdPod. Like us on Facebook. Haddix, I think you're doing some work on Instagram. We got, 20 followers now?
I had 22, 23. Dude. Hey, we're moving on up. Moving on up.
We still need some Twitter love. We're also, YouTube. Subscribe on iTunes. Leave us a 5-star review so we can actually have reviews show up and people can find us when they search that up. And one other thing you'll notice if you go on any of those social media accounts is we have a logo now. And it's no longer Napoleon Dynamite. It is actually a legitimate Pseudo Nerd Pod logo.
Every week we seem like we're slowly but surely pretending to look legitimate.
I know. By the end of February, we're going to be asking for donations to afford all of these high-tech additions that we've added to this podcast.
We're at downtown San Francisco and Cleveland skyscraper headquarters.
I'll say technically, Kiser, you and I could do some type of in-studio type of thing. And by that I mean I could go over your house.
You made it sound like I was going to rent out office space.
Well, hey, dude, we make enough money. You know what I mean? If Kiser gets that segue that we were talking about on social media. Then,
and for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, you should follow us on social media.
Exactly.
And be able to yeah. So
that's your own fault. So
that's a tease, right?
See, that was a good segue. That was a tease and a segue.
Yep.
But like we were saying, this month we were talking about all Star Wars all month long last month, and this is going to be our off month where we kind of talk about different topics. And as we already alluded to, this topic is we're going to go sports related. We're sports fans here. It's not all totally nerdy, but I'm sure we can get nerdy when it comes to sports. And we're going to talk about the Super Bowl since that is this Sunday. We'll talk everything about the NFL season in general, then move into the Super Bowl itself, kind of talk about the different storylines that are going around with the Super Bowl, and then end the show with our predictions on how we think the Super Bowl is going to turn out and any sort of tidbits and stories and anything else that we want to talk about in regards to the NFL 2015 season.
Hooray.
That's the enthusiasm I was looking for right there.
I just love the word tidbits. Every time someone says tidbits, I smile. I don't know why.
I think it makes you think of like a food. Like I'm pretty sure like you had a tidbit of like crackers or something.
I don't have a tidbit of anything. I got half a Five Guys double cheeseburger. I'll have to talk to them and see if they
so
can
would
get
that be
us,
2.5
advertise.
guys?
It would be what? Oh, I get it because half a. God. Yeah. Oh man, I didn't know we brought the comedian on the show today.
What can you say? I'm just locked and loaded and ready to go. So let's do this. The 2015 NFL season is basically over now as we move into Super Bowl Sunday. So, Haddix, I'll start with you. What were your surprises in the season in general? Anything in particular that really shocked you?
I mean, we could sit here and go into a lot of different things. I think one of my favorite things, again, this is kind of looking back now that the season is basically over, in hindsight, but I've gotten a huge kick out of the whole Eddie Lacy being too fat thing. He's didn't perform like everyone thought he was going to, especially compared to how he ended the season last year. And I don't need to go into any stats, but any football fan saw it
enough to tell you about that.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe that's also why it's more visible to us, because us three, like I'm sure a lot of people listening or just a lot of people in general, we do play fantasy football, and he definitely was a flop. So, and it just kind of came out that he wasn't injured at all. He was fat. He just couldn't do.
He was just fat.
That's what people kept saying. And like, as mean as that sounds, I guess it is a huge part of playing football. It's not, these big guys aren't just fat guys. They are, they're in shape. So
they're athletic. Yeah, no, definitely. Especially in a position like that. I mean, when you're a lineman, defensive or offensive, you can afford to have a little bit more fat on you. I mean, there's a lot of muscle there too. But when you're running back, you need to be able to cut and spin and be able to, have some agility behind you. And Eddie Lacy did not have that this year whatsoever.
No,
and that's not every running back's MO either. I mean, there's been plenty of big running backs like your Jerome Bettis's and your who was the guy from the Giants, little twinkle toes Jacobs or whatever.
Brandon Jacobs.
Yeah, Brandon Jacobs. I mean, there's a lot of guys.
Well, that said, I agree.
Fucking Tolbert.
Well, see, Tolbert's more of a fullback, though. And, I mean, you can get away with having some weight, but that was not Eddie Lacy's MO, and that was not how he played the position and how the Packers expected him to play the position.
And I feel like it slowed him down. He didn't use it to his advantage. It slowed him down more than necessarily gave him this, like, wrecking ball mentality where he was just plowing people over. He was just too slow,
Did you see that?
He seemed to be a lot more of like a going downhill type of player, because they also have James Starks, who seems to be more of the the speedy guy going around the corners and stuff.
He's their third down back.
Yeah,
he's more of a catching back. Yeah.
But McCarthy, I don't know if you guys saw this report that he wants Eddie Lacy to show up next season 30 pounds lighter than he is right now, which is a lot.
Oh God, yeah, that's definitely a lot.
Did you notice? Did you see that Tony Horton from the
P90X
reached out to him, and there's a good chance that Eddie Lacy might work out with him?
I mean, why not, dude? It might make him some money. He definitely needs to lose 30 pounds, and it's gonna be tough. So
right. Plus, it's a contract year for him next year, so it'll be very interesting. I would not be surprised if Eddie Lacy if he has the work ethic, he could actually turn around and have a great turnaround season next year.
Oh, definitely. I agree.
Hoagie, how about you? Any big surprises this year?
Not really. The one thing that's always fascinating every year is just the churn and burn of head coaches. I believe this year we had, I think, 3, maybe even 4 head coaches that were fired on, and most of them that are, quote unquote resigned, which that's bullshit too. You got, are near and dear to our hearts. And I liked how you said at the beginning where you said, the NFL season's basically over. Well, for us, the NFL season was over back in November for the Cleveland Browns.
That's
who
being
fired
kind.
Mike Pettin. Yeah, probably. Mike Pettin gets fired. We got Hugh Jackson now. Chip Kelly gets fired, replaced by our boy Pat Shurmur. And then Ken Wisenhunt. And the thing that's really fascinating about these guys is that they really only had that position for a few years. I think Chip Kelly had the most of being his 4th year. He had 4 years in Philly.
Only 3 years.
Maybe
in
even
Philly,
3.
I believe. Yeah. And Pat Shurmur didn't replace Chip Kelly. Pat Shurmur went to Minnesota as an offensive coordinator to replace North Turner out there.
Oh, okay. It must have been since the last thing I read here was January 16th. So yeah, the article I'm reading is a few weeks old.
Yeah, the Eagles hired Doug Peterson as their head coach.
Yeah, so it's not a shocking thing, but it's so fascinating just how the NFL works as far as it's a win now league, and I know that's a buzzword or a cliche thing to say, but it's true. If you don't produce, you're out, and there's way too many coaches out there that are chomping to bit to be head coaches. Now, whether or not they want to be head coaches for the Titans or the Browns, that kind of remains to be seen, but. I'm excited about Hugh Jackson. I just don't know if he's the answer.
We'll do a whole nother podcast at some point talking about the Browns and specifically the hiring of Hugh Jackson, things like that. Because I think it's a great hire for us. And you could say, oh, that's a homer in me, and maybe that's a little bit of the case. But everything I've been reading about him and just his successes in the NFL, I think he will be a good candidate for the turnaround. But
last time you said that too, didn't you like Chud when he got hired and he got fired for 1 year?
I was okay with Chud. He wasn't the flashiest hire, but it was one of those I was going to give him a shot. But it was a more positive reaction than when they hired Pat Shurmur, who to this day I think was the worst hiring in the NFL history. But to your point of Chip Kelly, one of the biggest disappointments, I think, in the NFL season this year is the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, if we would have done this podcast back leading into the NFL season for 2015, and you would have asked me my Super Bowl picks, I would have had the Philadelphia Eagles right up there contending for the NFC title. I would have picked the Packers depending on when we did the podcast, if Jordy Nelson was healthy at that point or not. But as soon as Jordy went down, I was taking the Eagles, and they were a disappointment this year.
I think the other big disappointment. I thought the Chargers were going to turn around this year too, and they didn't do it. They actually did a real horrible season.
They were plagued with injuries towards the middle,
the whole year.
Yeah.
Really, I think they had them. How many offensive linemen started for them? It was like some ridiculous amount.
Oh,
and
God,
their wide receivers were
even
hurt.
their wide receiver core. Yeah.
It was a tough go for the Chargers, and their division, produced 2 playoff teams with the Chiefs and the Broncos. So it was not the ideal situation for them. And now, to be honest, their whole next season I think is going to be a disaster too, because they just came out. I don't know if you guys saw that. It came out that they're going to stay in San Diego for another year. And if you read the letter that the owner wrote, it's basically saying, oops, my bad. I guess LA didn't want me that bad this year. We'll just see what happens this year, and chances are they're going to try again to reapply for LA next year. So if I'm a San Diego fan, I'm not going to a game this year because I'm just pissed off at the whole ownership and everything the way they've handled – pretty much everything has been just terrible. I think the other big disappointment, I thought the Chargers were going to turn around this year because the Philadelphia Eagles, one of the biggest disappointments, I think, in the NFL season this year is the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, if you would have done this podcast back leading into the NFL season for 2015, and you would have asked me my Super Bowl picks, I would have had the Philadelphia Eagles right up there contending for the NFC title.
Are the Rams still sticking around in St. Louis? Because I know that they were
No, the
they're-
Rams
they're
are
in LA, yeah.
Yeah,
I said they're in LA. Also, there's been a lot of talks about Oakland. They're looking at Las Vegas to go play football.
Well, I also heard San Antonio
Yeah.
linked for them, but I think Oakland's staying. I think San Diego has a good shot at going to LA next year, but other than that, I think everybody's kind of staying put for the time being. I think Vegas could get a team down the line, but that would be if they added expansion teams at that point. But that's a whole other conversation for another time. One more big surprise for us, at least for me, I don't know if you guys will agree with this or not, is the Carolina Panthers. They kept winning. First it's they're 5-0. Oh, they're 6-0. Oh, they're 7-0. I sat there every time saying, there's no way this team is that good. They should not be undefeated. They're getting lucky. Kelvin Benjamin was hurt preseason, and when Ted Ginn is your number one wide receiver to throw to, I'm thinking there's just no way they're going to be able to do anything. And they kept winning, and next thing you know, I'm like, oh my God, this team is 13-0. They end up blowing out the Falcons, and then 2 weeks later they lose to them, and here they are playing in the Super Bowl, and they are one win away from finishing 18-1, 17-1, something to that effect, and winning the Super Bowl. So I don't know how did you guys. I'm going to say this because I don't think anybody foresaw them going to the Super Bowl preseason. At what point did you guys think, like, hey, this team's got a shot?
I don't know the exact point I thought that, but it was definitely later in the season, and maybe it's because I don't want to say a Cam Newton hater. I think that kind of ties back into fantasy football, and I hate to do that. But it was like you said, I kind of kept denying the whole thing while it was happening, even though it was happening right in front of me, just because on paper their team is not that good. And maybe that's just goes to show you how good Cam Newton actually is, because the team's not that great. And don't get me wrong, their defense is really good, and Greg Olson's probably one of the best tight ends in the NFL. But other than that, before this year, I mean, was Jonathan Stewart anything amazing? I don't follow the Panthers really well. I don't follow his career very well, but
he was always solid. But the problem for him is they were such a running back by committee. It was D'Angelo, it was Jonathan Stewart, and it was Mike Tolbert, and they were sort of rotated
and
so
Cam
much.
Newton.
Right, and yeah, when you have Cam Newton back there running, it was such a mix. I think the best thing to happen to Jonathan Stewart was letting D'Angelo Williams walk.
oh well, God, yeah. But I'm not sure exactly when. Part of me still doesn't think that they're as good of a team as their record showed, although they stomped the fucking Cardinals last week. But
well, let's talk about that for a minute. So, going into the playoffs, I think I was still hesitant about the Panthers team. I thought they sort of, with that loss to the Falcons and the way they just sort of finished up the season, it wasn't strong. But I tell you what, the way they played the Seahawks, and even though they almost blew a 31-point halftime lead, the way they destroyed the Cardinals, like, this team in the playoffs has looked damn good.
I think my problem with them right now is, and this was something I had read earlier today, is that they are a huge momentum type of team. Them not playing now for, 2 weeks, I don't know how well they're going to come out the gate, because that's how they're going to be. It's statistically said that if you're down or if you're up by more than 10 in the Super Bowl, you're like a 95% chance that you're going to win the Super Bowl. And that's what they need to do. They have to keep at their pace, and they need to score early. And that's always been their MO, is that they are the NFL leading scorer of first quarter points. I think that by far it's not even close as far as the second team. So if they jump out the gate and put up like 17 points in the first quarter, then that's the kind of game they're going to play. And then after that, it's just kind of containing the other team from scoring as much as they're able to kind of trickle after the first quarter.
Yeah, I think to your point about the 2 weeks, I think the 2 weeks off, does not bode well for Carolina, with their whole momentum. And I think it bodes very well for the Broncos to kind of come up with a scheme, to go up against Cam Newton with, and their amazing defense. I think I was reading earlier, this is the second Super Bowl where it's the number one ranked scoring offense against the best total defense. I believe that was the stat.
And was that by any chance the last time the Broncos and Seahawks played each other?
Yes, yeah. The first one was, which the Broncos were on the other end of it, though. They were the number one scoring offense going up against the number one total defense in the Seahawks, and the Seahawks spanked them. So,
yeah, I was to say, we know how that one turned out.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting now that they're on the other side of it. I don't know what to think about all that, but I think it bodes well for the Broncos to have 2 weeks with their stellar defense to game plan for Cam Newton.
It's funny. I think it bodes. Sorry. Oh, it's fine. I was just gonna say, when you guys are talking about this momentum and how Carolina having this time off, it would not work out well for them. Don't forget they had a bye, and they came out and jumped on top of the defending NFC champion Seahawks, which were a team a lot of people thought just get in the playoffs and they're going to, take care of business. And the Panthers jumped out to a 31-0 lead coming off a 1 week bye. So I don't think this week off is going to hurt them from a team standpoint. Now, to your point, it gives the Broncos defense another week to prepare. That would be where I think where it would hurt the Panthers. Not so much on their end, but just the fact that the Broncos are going to have more time with Wade Phillips and that defense to game plan for Cam Newton. And
no, I definitely agree with that. I definitely do think that the more time that is, especially with Peyton being hurt, and I think especially with the Panthers firing on all cylinders, it seems. And I really didn't take Seattle too seriously, considering how they made it to the division round of the NFC division round. They were basically out of the playoffs if it wasn't for Blair Walsh missing a field goal or missing an extra point. So I don't think there was a lot of momentum coming in for the Seahawks, anyways. And you can tell, right? That first half where Carolina just spanked them, and then they basically were able to get away with basically being non-existent the second half and still pulling off a win.
Yeah, and that's fair. The Seahawks coming into the playoffs were probably the hottest team, or right up there with Russell Wilson was throwing like 3 or 4 touchdown passes a game. Doug Baldwin was like shocking the world with everything. And they really came in with a lot of momentum. And then they beat
Arizona week 15 or whatever.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So, they had all kinds of momentum going for them. And then they came in and just laid a turd against the Vikings and somehow snuck out with a win. So it was, to your point, they weren't as hot as they had been going into that matchup against Carolina.
And it could have also had a lot to do with home field advantage. Carolina plays very, very. They're undefeated at home. Their single loss was in Atlanta, correct? So, and that was a shit show game too. That was actually, that was close. Did they go into overtime? That game?
No, or did that end? It was like a fourth quarter. Carolina had a chance like once or twice with like 5 minutes to go to try to score, and they didn't. The Falcons defense held them. So it was a very, very ugly, low scoring game, which I think if you're the Broncos, that's the kind of game you want the Super Bowl to be. You don't want this to be a 31-28 sort of game. You want it to be 10-13. You want it to be, if the final score is both teams scoring under 20, I think Denver wins. And I think that's going to be the key, is Denver's defense just making sure that this game stays well under control and they don't let it get out of hand.
Yeah, I agree. The Broncos defense has not allowed a single rushing touchdown to a quarterback this season. And I honestly think the only thing the Broncos defense has to worry about is Cam Newton. I think if you can keep him contained, keep him from scoring touchdowns, I think the rest of it will kind of fall in place. I could be wrong, but that's what I think.
I think the most important thing in that game is going to be who the X factor is in that, like the guy that you don't expect, because you're gonna wonder, how well is Cam going to do? Is he going to be able to, get away from Von Miller? I mean, those are like the main focus points that a lot of people are talking about is, Von Miller versus Cam, and is Peyton just going to throw little flutter passes and, not be able to put anything behind it because he's, old man winner. And then, but the other thing that we haven't talked much about, and I think is the most even just as important as the Broncos defense, is the running game. That is what's, I think, really going to be what's going to decide this game. If they come out early and they're able to establish the run game, keep possession, keep the ball out of Cam's hands, and be able to march down the field, I think that bodes well. Now, if after a half, between C.J. Anderson and Ronnie Hillman, they combined for like 22 yards. I can see this game being almost laughable and not even watchable in the second half.
In the aspect, you're saying if they can't develop a run game that they're just going to get worked?
I think if they can't develop a running game, which Peyton Manning needs, he's not going to be able to just start flinging it. I don't think he's going to be able to.
Yeah, this is not the Peyton Manning and the Peyton Manning offenses of the old by any means. This is the Gary Kubiak, we're going to run the ball a lot and try to control the game, control the clock, and play strong defense. It's not the Peyton Manning, we're going to light you up for 45 and hope our defense doesn't give up 46. That's not what this is anymore.
Yeah, so now you have a running back, a two feature back setup in Denver, and what I mean by it's not even going to be watchable is that if you tell me right now at halftime and I don't even see the score, and I ask you what are Ronnie Hillman and C.J. Anderson's like running, their yards, what they've contributed, and if you tell me that combined they haven't even eclipsed 30 yards, I would assume that at this point Carolina's up by at least 2 touchdowns.
I mean, that's fair. I can't disagree with that thought. One thing I'd like to ask you guys is, well, not even ask you, I guess so much as point out, we're sitting here talking about this Denver defense and how they need to stop Carolina's offense. Carolina's offense is averaging 31 points a game. And the Denver defense the Denver offense, has only scored 31 or more points twice this year. So, to your point, if Carolina lights this defense up, I think it's game over. But let's not forget, this Carolina defense is pretty good too. We talk all about how good Denver's defense is, but Carolina's got a good defense too. And going up against Peyton Manning, who has struggled with this offense in general, has struggled throughout most of the year. I think, you always say it's kind of obvious that, turnovers will be key in this game, but don't be surprised if Peyton throws a pick or two in this game with the way that this Carolina defense has been playing.
I think that they need to focus on not throwing to the corners. When I was talking about X factors, and this is going to be a silly thing for me to say, but I think the tight ends for the Broncos, I think, are going to play a big role. I think Vernon Davis is actually going to be used and showcased, and that's who I think.
Daniels, who had 2 touchdowns last week.
Well, say bold prediction from Vernon Davis.
Yeah, I'll say Daniels as well. But that if you're gonna hurt the defense of Carolina, you go after the safeties, and they're good players, but they have an all-pro corner who's going to basically be on Demarius or Sanders. I'm not sure which one they're going to probably put him out. I assume Demarius, because he's also a very good tackler.
Yeah, for Demarius, I imagine. Yeah.
So to me, if Peyton's going to win, plus, I said you're not going to throw any bombs to Sanders. I'd be surprised if he throws more than, unless they're down. If they're losing by a decent amount, I don't see them throwing too many 30, 35-yard fly routes to Emmanuel Sanders. That's just not their game anymore. That's not their MO. So it's going to be a lot of 4 to 5 yard catch and run for Demaryius Thomas, where you always see that same play where he kind of gets that pass where it looks like he's going to go down the middle. It gets that bubble screen and then gets all those blocks up front, and then he can kind of go down the field. And then the other one is the kind of down the middle to Daniels. That's kind of what they're featuring now, is a lot of 5 to 8 yard catches, and then hoping that getting a couple more after the catch, and then showcasing that running game and switching in and out Ronnie Hillman and C.J. Anderson. So to me, I think the big thing is can the tight ends of the Broncos find a weakness, because I don't think the wide receivers are going to see as much success, especially if we're expecting or thinking that the Broncos have a chance to win this.
Well, and
I think.
Go ahead.
I'll just say it real quick because Hougie did cover a lot. I think if the Broncos win this game, their defense does well, and I think that they game planned it well enough that they get their stars involved, which would be Demaryius and Emmanuel Sanders. Now, I'm not necessarily saying they're going to have huge games, 200 yards and 2 touchdowns or something, but I think they get the ball in the hands of their playmakers somehow, if that's bubble screens or whatnot. And I think I was reading earlier that Peyton Manning was actually in the middle of the pack for deep balls thrown. And a lot of people seem to think that he can't throw that ball anymore, to whereas he doesn't necessarily throw it as much as he used to, because he used to throw it all the time. But he's still not horrible at it. It's not like he can't throw the ball. So I think it's going to be a mix of a great defense and game planning to get the ball in the hands of the people who can do things with it. And I think that does involve the tight ends as well. Maybe more Owen Daniels and Vernon Davis, but...
So let me ask you this, Haddix. Hoagie's kind of thrown his X factor as Vernon Davis in this game. A surprise candidate, if you will. You got to take out your Cam Newton, take out your Peyton Manning, the main players. Even a Von Miller or DeMarcus Ware, Josh Norman having a great day. Who for you is the guy that could maybe come out of this game and have a surprise, either on the Panthers or on the Broncos? It could be one of those, he's the Super Bowl hero, if you will.
If they stick to their Gary Kubiak style offense, I think Ronnie Hillman might come out of this game. And it's a little bit of a bold, I don't even want to say bold prediction. I mean, he's obviously going to get touches. I don't know if he's technically the starting running back or not. But I mean,
it's fair. It's fair to say it's a semi-bold prediction.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of a split, an even split between those two. So it's not like he's the number one running back who's getting all. It's not like Jonathan Stewart for the Panthers, where he's a clear-cut number one back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. For some reason, I can just see. I could see if the Broncos win, Ronnie Hillman having a good day. Again, not necessarily saying that it's a huge record-setting day, 100-plus yards and multiple touchdowns, but I think he does enough that he stands out and either runs well enough to open up the field or does run well enough where he gets multiple touchdowns. He's broken off a couple real deep runs this year, like 70 yards or something. So I could see him maybe, doing something like that. That's my X factor for the game. I'm leaning towards the Broncos winning, which we'll get into later. So that's probably why more of my things are coming on their side of the field.
No, let's not also forget too that as far as on the Carolina side, the other guy you want to watch out for that I think that he is not getting enough publicity or enough credit is Ted Ginn Jr. And not just
actually was going to be my start talking about it, and I'll jump in. That was going to be my surprise, my X factor.
I said for the other side of it, to me, it's Ted Ginn Jr. on special teams. But I think I'm the opposite way. I think he's capable, obviously, at the special teams. What I think is actually going to happen is, to me, Ted Ginn Jr. will he make a great catch? Like a catch, he's not gonna get. I don't think he gets a lot of targets, but he'll make big plays. So to me, he either comes up with a great catch, or he drops an important pass. That's kind of how I see him. Like there's two, that he's to me those are the two sides of the same coin. And secondly, sorry, I said Greg Norman like an idiot, and about
I thought you said Greg Norman, but I was like maybe I just didn't hear that right.
No, that's my bad. That's just a bad job out of me. But go ahead.
He'd be a hell of
I'm
an
good
X
on.
factor if Greg Norman showed up and did that.
Just beat somebody to death with a 9-iron.
But to the point of Ted Ginn, I'm going to start this out by saying Ted Ginn is a very streaky, interesting football player because he will. There was a game this year, I think he had 3 catches for like 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then he'll drop like the most wide open touchdown passes, and then he'll catch like the stupid. Like, he is just so all over the place. But to me, he could have one of those games where he gets 2 bombs, and he might finish with like, again, one of those like 3 or 4 catches, 150 yards and a touchdown. And then on special teams, he makes some big plays. Maybe he breaks one. Maybe he just, gets some really good yardage. He actually was pretty influential in the Cardinals game, in the playoff game, the way he handled that. So Ted Ginn, I think, is either going to be one of those Super Bowl heroes, or he's going to be like the Super Bowl 0 and really blow things for the Panthers.
No, definitely agree. I think he's one or the other. He either does not produce at all, or he is going to be up for MVP.
And speaking of MVP, how about league MVP this year? So,
see what I did there?
You set me up nicely. I appreciate that. Is it Cam Newton? I mean, at this point, does anybody have any argument that it should not be Cam Newton to win the MVP?
It has to be. I can't imagine. And once again, I don't know if they factor playoffs. Some people say no. Some say, well,
they're not supposed to.
Yeah.
But I'm sure I think it does sway some people's thoughts, though.
Absolutely, it does.
I mean, as far as what MVP stands for to me, like if you're talking about who on any team,
it's the most valuable player.
I'll say I think that's a pretty clear-cut description of what.
Well, I mean, when they try to give the credentials for what is considered like a most valuable player, I look at a single person that put the team on his back, and there's nobody who comes close to doing that. He is responsible for more points scored than anybody else in the league this year, and he's also been one of the most polarizing people. This has been Cam Newton's year, for better or for worse. I think it belongs to him, bar none.
Absolutely, and the only person I think that would have even come close to that was Carson Palmer. But to your point, Kyle, he didn't carry the team on his back. He had Fitzgerald, he had Michael Floyd, he had John Brown, he had Chris and David Johnson. Like, he had all these weapons around him that, well, don't get me wrong, he was facilitating this offense and doing a damn great job with it, but he was not dealing with just a bunch of jabronis like Cam Newton has. Cam Newton's had Jonathan Stewart, who's had a great season, and Greg Olsen. But then you got streaky Ted Ginn and Devin Funchess, who didn't do anything most of the year. And I can't even think of the other receivers' names right now. Is Jericho Cotchery their receiver? Am I confusing? Is he on a different team? Like, there's just a bunch of like people that are not very good, and Cam Newton has just turned this offense into an explosive offense. It's not like they're just winning these games 13-10 and Cam's not turning the ball over, putting up some Alex Smith type numbers. He's put up MVP numbers on a team with an offense that doesn't have a lot of big name weapons to go to. So he definitely, I think it's a no-brainer he's going to win it. And if there was any debate for him and Carson, like you said, playoffs are not supposed to be included, but they're going to be, and he made Carson looked awful throughout the entire playoffs, and Cam has still looked like an MVP.
And before Haddix says his piece, Jericho Cotchery is still, plays for the Panthers.
I don't really have much to add. I think he is. I'm not a Cam Newton fan, and I have to admit that he deserves the MVP this year. So,
okay, now your boy Tom. Tommy terrific.
Let's talk about. Tom did great. Tom will finish in the top 3-ish for MVP votes, but he is not the number one guy this year.
No.
And that's no fault of him. I mean, it just he played solid. He played good, but he's not.
I mean,
the
it'll always
MVP.
come back to the fact that he has Gronkowski. You know what I mean? And that makes up for a lot. When you have a weapon like Gronk, don't get me wrong. I think Tom Brady is an amazing quarterback, and he'd probably be my MVP if the vote was up to me. But
He's the MVP of
it's not.
your heart.
Exactly. So, but no, I agree. I think Cam deserves it.
So let's talk about the other quarterback in this Super Bowl matchup, this is going to be the biggest difference in age for two starting quarterbacks in a Super Bowl in NFL history, which is something. It's very possible it's going to be his final game in the NFL as a quarterback. There's some debate there. He was benched. Well, he was hurt, then benched when he came back for Brock Osweiler, then returned, and here he is looking for his second Super Bowl victory in Peyton Manning. If he wins, it'll be career win number 200, giving him all-time lead over Brett Favre. So you can write as many of these stories as you want. He followed John Elway's path, where Elway didn't win the Super Bowl. Then in his last 2 years, Elway wins 2 back-to-back. I mean, the storylines are there. They're writing themselves. What more can you say about Peyton Manning? Does he still have it? Is this going to be a special season for him, or is it just not going to work?
I hope it is. Again, this has nothing to do with Cam Newton or the Panthers.
But for the record, Haddix does not like Cam Newton.
I do not like Cam Newton.
He's not a fan of Cam Newton.
I think he is
the
on the
Panthers.
record saying he is not a fan of Cam Newton.
Dude, you always got to be on the record when you say stuff. But this isn't going to be – if they win this game, it's not necessarily because of Cam Newton. Now, don't get me wrong. Because of Peyton Manning. Don't get me wrong. The guy could come out and have a great game, but I think if they win, like we were talking about before, a lot of things are going to happen. But I would love to see him win, him get his 200th career win, and retire. Because I don't know what next year holds in store for him if he comes back. I mean, the way this season went was not good. And I would hate to see such a great quarterback end his career in a bad way. So I hope he wins. Whether he gets MVP or not, I don't necessarily think he will, but I would love to see him get that 200, get a second Super Bowl, and retire like a champ.
There are very few things that are more organic than sports drama when storylines like this match up. Like, you can't make this shit up. And so that's why I'm really rooting for Peyton, just because, like you guys said, the cards are just – he has the hand of riding off in the sunset, of being, he's already considered arguably probably one of the greatest of all time, not including the playoffs. Obviously, his playoff record is pretty abysmal. But if he can end on this type of high note, I feel like we're not going to talk about Peyton Manning and his follies in the playoffs. You know what I mean? I feel like if he gets this done, I think a lot of that stigma kind of melts away. And he's not, and like you said, if they win, I don't see it being because Peyton throws up 350. I'm not saying he's not capable of doing it. He's no longer, the young, he's not Cam Newton. He's not the athletic marvel with a big arm. He's now the cerebral guy. He's, the sensible shoe. He's like the Porkins of your fleet now.
And there's our
you can always rely on him. Mm-hmm. There's our one Porkins quota. So I'm rooting for it. I will not be shocked if, even though they're not, I don't even think they're favored. I'm pretty sure the Panthers are favored.
Panthers are, well, when I first opened up, it was about a 3.5 favorites for the Panthers.
That's usually I think that a lot of people like to do 3.5. 3.5 seems to be, unless it's like a completely lopsided. But yeah, it's just, you can't make it up. Someone had their phone on silent.
What a jabroni.
Seriously. We're trying to run a professional podcast here, and this guy sits over here.
Scrap the whole
ruins
thing.
Everything. Let's just cancel the recording right now.
Dude, it was my mom. Just be like, "Hey, are you doing the podcast today?" Well, yes, Mom, I am. All right, so yeah, that's my my feeling about Peyton. Other than what the hell is his wife needing HGH for?
Well, yes. I think we could save the HGH conversation for another time because right now everything is reporting he's linked with, what was it, Ryan Howard or Ryan Zimmerman and Ryan Howard or a couple other people, and everybody's completely denying it. A few of them are already countersuing this Al Jazeera article, and so did he do the HGH? I don't know. He's saying he didn't, and I don't have a reason not to believe him. Honestly, if he did, I don't think it matters. The guy was coming back from serious neck injury. If it's part of the, healing process, like, so be it. Like when Ray Lewis used deer antlers or whatever to
was it like pheromones or deer spray or something
like that? Yeah. And I mean, all that stuff, like, I'm not one of those that thinks it's like an unfair advantage if it's like a healing process and things like that. Peyton Manning is still going to be one of the greatest quarterbacks, whether or not he used HGH to repair his neck or stem cells or, if he found a fig tree somewhere that gave him healing powers. Like, whatever. He healed himself. What would bother me is if he actually took the HGH and he's denying it, and he comes out as a liar. Like, that's where he loses some credibility with me.
If they find out that he was doing it and he admits to it, does that pretty much kill his chances of any kind of recognition or Hall of Fame inductions at that point, you think?
I don't know. I'm leaning right now to say no, it would not affect it because of how big a name the Mannings are with the NFL, how close Archie is with the NFL. And the NFL has not really – it's not like baseball where it's taken a hard stance against, steroids and betting and things like that. The NFL's been it hasn't had the scandals and the stigma that baseball had for it. So I could see it not being an issue. But that said, who knows? I guess time will tell on that one, but I don't think – I just can't see Peyton lying about something like that. Like, of all the things I don't like about Peyton Manning, like, I don't think he's a liar.
Speaking of liars, we started this 5-minute segment with Kiser saying we weren't going to talk about HGH in this podcast. That just made me laugh. I don't know. I'm not calling you a liar, but that was my only segue.
I think you did.
So.
I'm pretty sure you did. So
I'm on record of not calling Kiser a liar and not liking Cam Newton. So
one last question before we do our predictions, because I think we haven't even mentioned these guys once. But how much credit do you give, Kubiak, who is his first year coaching the Broncos? And I've always been a big fan of Rivera to begin with. I always thought he's always been a good coach, and he's always been a good player coach. What do you guys? What?
And he's Hispanic.
He's Hispanic. Haddix is thrown out to his Latino community.
For all the Hispanics listening to the
Latino
podcast.
heat?
Yes.
Okay, so when the Kubiak hiring was made, I thought it was an absolute joke. I thought John Elway was an idiot. I thought that was going to be it. Peyton was going to say peace, maybe retire. Kubiak has always just seemed like a meh coach to me. He, coached the Texans to moderate success with Matt Schaub. He was an offense coordinator for the Ravens. They did okay with him. I just never thought he was going to do much, and he surprised me this year, to say the least. He's gotten his team there, and I think a lot of that was bringing in Wade Phillips to run that defense. Wade Phillips is a phenomenal defensive coordinator, and with the talent they have on defense, that's really made a difference. But Kubiak's offense, you can see it's working, and it's doing enough. And that said, Ron Rivera, to me, he was in hot water for a period of time, some years back. Changed himself to the old riverboat Ron, where he started becoming more aggressive instead of all this, conservative play calling. They got more aggressive, and their team turned things around. So, props to them. If I'm John Fox and I'm watching my two former teams play each other in the Super Bowl, I probably feel like a piece of shit right now.
Yep.
And I do agree about Kubiak, where especially because John Fox has seemed like Peyton Manning's best friend when it came to just the stats. There's no way that Peyton Manning is putting up such insane numbers at an older age if he doesn't have the kind of scheme that John Fox is giving him. Not saying that scheme helped out Jay Cutler out in Chicago.
To be fair, I think Adam Gase, who was offensive coordinator for John Fox in both locations, has done well. I mean, he did well with Peyton, and I think Jay Cutler turned things around. He actually bought a tailored suit for Adam Gase as a thank you for the season this year because he helped correct a lot of his issues.
And what's up with the quarterbacks buying stuff? Like, didn't Cam Newton buy like flat screen TVs for like all of his offensive linemen for like a good game?
He may have. That's very possible. I feel like quarterbacks do that. Quarterbacks or running backs will buy something for their offensive linemen, like if they've had a really good season. It's just a way of being like, yep, keep blocking for me, bros. You did well. All right. So
and awkwardness. Thanks, Haddix.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys covered it all, man. You guys covered it all. I got nothing to say.
So let's say this. Let's go into our picks, and then I want to end things on everybody give a couple minutes of what they're looking forward to in the Super Bowl itself, be it actually something in game, commercials, or otherwise. Haddix, I think I'll start with predictions for you. I'm getting the impression you are picking Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos, but let me know.
If I was betting a lot of money on this, I might change my mind. But since it's just you two jabronis,
and the thousands of our podcast listeners,
and the words of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, the millions and millions of our fans, I'm going to go with the Broncos, though. I am.
Close game, blowout. What are you thinking?
Well, if the Broncos win, I think it's going to have to be a close game. So I'm going to go with a close, low-scoring game. Not very exciting for a Super Bowl. Not necessarily what I want to see, but if the Broncos win, I think that's going to be the way it has to be. So that's what I'm predicting.
Agree completely that if the Broncos are going to win, I think it's got to be a low-scoring one as well. Hougie, how about you?
I believe that the first quarter is the only quarter worth watching. If the score is tight or if even Denver's up after the first quarter, then it obviously shows you that they've got the right scheme in place to contain Cam Newton and the offense, because that's their MO. It's score a lot and score real quick. If they can go into halftime,
it's like me with the
either
ladies.
being tied, I'm sure. I will also say the Broncos. I would say something like a 17-14.
So you heard it here first, folks. If the game is 14-0 at the end of the first quarter in favor of the Panthers, turn that shit off. It's not even worth watching the last three quarters.
No, I agree. I do believe that. If it's halftime and the Panthers are up 14-0, I will. I don't know what I'll do. We can talk about it, but I will
not watch.
I will
Coldplay.
bet anything. I will pay any amount of money to see the Broncos come back from 14 down after halftime and win.
Well, there you go. So we'll have to see what happens there. So I'm sorry, I lost in that. You picked the Broncos, right? You 17-14, you said?
Yeah, 17-14. And also because the Panthers, it's their first time there, or at least a lot of them, it's their first time there. I think the jitters of Super Bowl are also going to hit them too.
All right, well, I'm going to go against the norm here, and I am picking the Panthers, and I don't think it's going to be close. I think it is like a 38-14 sort of affair. I think Peyton gets embarrassed, and Cam Newton finishes what is basically the Cinderella season for him in this unorthodox Carolina Panthers team that has proven me wrong all year long. And that said, if the game is close, then there's a good chance the Broncos are going to win it, because I think they'll do better with the low-scoring game. But I'm picking the Panthers big.
You also hate Peyton Manning.
I mean,
Yes,
I do. But to be fair, I'm not like the biggest this was like my nightmare scenario for Super Bowl teams when it was like, these are the playoff teams. Who do you want? I said anything other than pretty much Denver and Carolina, with the exception of like Pittsburgh. I didn't want to see either. So here I am. But go Panthers. All right, Haddix. How about you? What's one thing you're looking forward to or not looking forward to, or something within the whole realm of the Super Bowl? Matchups, halftime shows, commercials, whatever. Let's hear it. What do you want to say that we
I'll be
talked
cliche.
about?
I'll be cliche and go commercials. More importantly, I love me some brand new movie trailer commercials. That's what I was looking forward to. The regular commercials, whatever, I don't care. But sometimes you get these new premiere, releases of a new, trailer number 2 or 3 of a movie. So I'm hoping I get some good ones there.
Nice. How about you, Hougie?
I'm curious what song Sting is going to play. Just because a lot of his songs they're not football rev up. He's got I can only think of maybe like 1 or 2, but a lot of his stuff's real mellow. I believe so.
I thought he was playing at the NBA All-Star game.
I thought Chris Warner was. So where is it at for the Super Bowl?
This
Who's
is
performing
Coldplay, and I forget who's supposed to. I thought somebody else is supposed to play with Coldplay, but Rihanna or something maybe. But I thought Sting was doing the NBA All-Star game.
I hope so, because I'll laugh at Hogan. So he's really looking forward to seeing Sting at the Super Bowl halftime.
Shoot. Spoiler alert, Sting makes an appearance. No, I could have sworn I read somewhere that it was Sting performing.
Sting to perform at halftime at the 2016 All-Star game for the NBA.
Yeah, Super Bowl 50, Bruno Mars to join Coldplay at the halftime show, ? So,
but hey,
so I'm actually curious about
Hoagie's Super Bowl will consist of Greg Norman with his 9-iron and Sting coming out to play. So, Hoagie, you're going to be severely disappointed, I think.
This guy's not even watching past the first half or quarter anyway, so
this is true. If it's going to be the way Kiser's guessing, I'll be chasing the channel after the first quarter.
Oh, God.
I'll tell you what will make me want to change the channel is Jim Nantz and Phil Simms broadcasting this game. I cannot stand Phil Simms. I think he is above and beyond the worst announcer. He is awful. He adds nothing to the conversation. Most of the time he stumbles. He says the stupidest things. He's a moron. He is just god-awful. And I have to listen to him for damn near 4 hours while he gives some of the worst. Football fans deserve better. They really do. He is above and beyond just freaking a nightmare. He is a pain to listen to in your ears, and he is just fucking awful. And I wish anybody other than CBS got this. I would love to hear John Gruden talk about people. I would love, even Chris Collinsworth get on there. I'll take Joe Buck. That's how much I hate Phil Simms. And to credit Jim Nantz, you can tell half the time he wants to hang himself. And one other thing, we're going to bring Mike Carey in to give his official Mike Carey, old official NFL referee, so he's like the CBS guy to talk about rules. Mike Carey is wrong every time they question him. They're like, hey, Mike, do you think that was a catch? No, I don't think he got either foot down. He kind of bobbled the ball. And then they'll cut to the thing, and he's like, they got both feet down, full control of the ball, it's a catch. Mike Carey is awful. Phil Simms is awful. I feel bad that everyone has to be put in front of this, and I hope anybody other than CBS has it next year. And actually, Thursday Night Football, I don't know if you guys saw this, there was a deal signed where now NBC is getting 4 games or 5 games, and then CBS is getting 5 games, and NFL Network will have the rest. That means less Phil Simms Thursday night. We'll get more Collinsworth and Michaels, so it's a victory for everybody.
So someone get that guy a cool washcloth to put on his head so he can cool down a little bit. Jesus.
Well, that's it.
You good?
I'm good.
You all right? All right.
So,
all right.
Next week, we'll give you guys a podcast. It's going to be our Valentine's Day special. So we'll change things up. We'll go a little nerdier again. We're not sure exactly what we're talking about just yet, but probably it'll have a Valentine's Day theme around it with a little nerd twist, if you will. Yeah, that's all I've got.
Want to throw out some
Besides
social media?
puberty.
Yeah, just remember, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, MySpace. We're not there, but Instagram, everything, at Pseudo Nerd Pod. And for the CLE to the Frisco, I am Josh Kiser. He is Josh Haddix, and he is Kyle Hoagland.
But which one of us?
Have a good Friday.
Take care.